We should know, starring your favorite and my favorite TV host, Terrence Rothman. I'm Paul Stephen Stone, and I'm here to talk about whatever Terrence wants me to talk about. He wants me to tell you how hard I've been working lately, moving myself and my wife and my dog, Deja, 3 separate times in the last few months. And we have one more move ahead of us. We have an 8-month interregnum, and then we have a final move back to our new house. So, kind of exhausted. Told Terrence I'm a little too old for this bullshit, but life is what it is.
You seem to be doing well, Paul.
Okay. Well,
although it's stressful. I'm not saying it's not stressful. But it's a pleasant stressfulness, isn't it?
Well, you know, life is good. If I stop to think about it, life is good. I'm very pleased with my writing, even though I'm sort of focused on one small area of the, one small issue, or it's not so small an issue, but still sometimes the writing is full-bodied and sometimes it isn't, and right now it is, so I feel good about it. And it's flowing, full-bodied and flowing, so that's good. It has a certain power to it, and that's really sort of interesting when that happens.
So you're in a good work mode.
Yes, and hopefully that will carry over into the novel I'm writing, my second novel. Thank you. Perfidious Blossom is the name of it.
Fiction?
It is. So steal as much as you can from life, but still call it fiction.
Paul Stephen Stone, our guest today at What We Should Know, coming to you from Cambridge Community Television. So, Paul, would you be kind enough to say something about your book, about subject matter?
Perfidious Blossom is the main, that's a character, is a woman named Blossom, who's, I would have to say, is very, very, if you end up with this woman as your wife, as the main character does, it means that your karma is due. And you're paying off a pretty big chunk of karma to get married to a woman like this. She's conniving, she's got 3 chess moves ahead of you, always figured out, and she's gonna get her way no matter what. So it's a little scary. In fact, part of me doesn't want to go back to working on the book because you have to spend time with this creature. But the other thing is that there's a whole spiritual aspect to the book, and I'm kind of excited about that. The narrator is warning a future incarnation of his soul, the next incarnation of his soul. He's writing this book to warn that incarnation that this woman is out in the universe and apparently looking for their soul spirit. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, that is frightening. That is frightening. That's like Darth Vader, you know, inhabiting the universe and getting out to create evil and havoc everywhere. But yes. This is a female.
It is.
This is a woman.
It is. Careful, Luke.
Yeah, I didn't know that I never anticipated the fact that you would have an idea that women could have this degree of evil. Well,
without trying to create a libelous situation, there is a woman that's the model for this. I could not have made this character up. She is somebody who's come into someone's life, married him, and I think it made his life hell. So
you're not talking about Hillary Clinton, though, are you?
Oh, I might be. I hadn't thought of that. Quite a few of the petals on her blossom have already been sacrificed.
I didn't want to interrupt you on that because I thought your thought was interesting.
No, there's the interesting thing for me with all this is you can end up in a bad relationship and eventually you get out of it. The interesting thing for me is that this character was so evil that I actually envisioned her seeking her victim out, you know, through karmic space and reincarnated lives. So, as I said, it has a spiritual aspect to it, and that's what's fun for me. If you read my first novel, Or So It Seems, that has a very strong spiritual underlayment. So And then speaking about spirituality, I expected the planet's spirit to reject both of these both of these major party candidates. I actually expected them.
That hasn't happened, has it?
No.
Yet.
Well, it has happened partially with Bernie, because Bernie did much. If you you look at the crowds that this woman attracts, she attracts nobody. She couldn't fill a high school gymnasium, whereas Bernie had 10,000. They would not show any of the pictures of the rallies because they were so successful, and really undercut the phony election results that we were all, forced to eat with our breakfast. So the whole thing has a real smell to it. But Hillary did have her karmic comeuppance with Bernie coming along, because everything that she proved through the election fraud and made herself so visible in terms of her character or lack thereof, that Bernie ended up bringing a lot of things into high relief. You suddenly saw what had been happening for the last 20 years. Fascinating, very, very interesting. I don't know what happened to him. It was like the air was let out at the very end.
That's interesting, yeah.
Because he totally went back on what he had been saying, and that's not like him, I don't believe.
He wanted the revolution. We all felt he wanted the revolution.
And he wanted to prevent both of them from becoming president. Trump more than Hillary. And I guess he's so afraid of Trump becoming president that he's willing to stand up for Hillary. But I don't buy that. Either she threatened him somehow or somebody threatened his family. I don't know. It's very strange.
And you think that's a realistic possibility? Someone threatened his family?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm starting to think that I wouldn't put anything past the Clintons. They talk about the Clinton kill list, body count. And it is all very, I certainly don't want to say anything that proves that she did it, because I certainly don't know. But I do think, and I said this before, that for everybody out there to think about that as a possibility, as a real possibility, says a lot about what they think of Hillary Clinton. That she her character. I think, she would steal an election. Would she have somebody killed that was an impediment to her success or her plans? I don't know. It's very interesting. But there is a pretty high body count of people that were somehow or other, one way or another, connected to the Clintons. And a number of them sort of had their accidents before they were going to be speaking on something, like that fellow who was a UN officer who had his windpipe crushed. They said by a barbell or something, but who knows? Who knows?
I hear you.
Yeah. And
it's frightening. It's frightening to think of politicians who are completely amoral, who have no concept whatsoever of morality as a guiding system, as a way to orient one's life, having no moral concept whatsoever to become president of the United States.
Well,
I think both of them are like that. I think both Trump and Clinton, both Clintons and Trump as well.
Right. Well, we should do a little bit of a caveat here. Neither of us are advocating you should vote for Trump.
That's true.
But we are advocating don't vote for Hillary. We're saying, I'm personally saying I'm voting for Jill Stein when the opportunity presents itself. The Green Party policies and platforms is absolutely in line with Bernie's positions, except Jill would not use drones. She would end the drone program. So she would not assassinate anybody, especially off of American soil, which is a pretty big distinction. And you can argue with that strategically, but morally, I certainly think it stands on its own merits. So we're not saying vote for Trump. If anything, we're saying don't vote for Trump. He's a bozo. He's not worthy of the office. I don't want to hand him the nuclear codes. I don't want to hand him the keys to the White House. He'll start putting gold signage out front that says Trump.
Trump Tower.
Trump Tower. Right. We put a tower on top of the White House, make it taller than the Washington Monument.
Right.
Because
why not?
Yeah, because that'll be a symbol of his penis, if nothing else.
Whatever.
I always enjoyed, when Cheney was VP, I used to say it had his VP-ness.
Did you really?
Yeah.
As illustrating who was in charge?
Well, no, as illustrating that the guy's a penis.
He really was. What an amazing character.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, the presidency of George W. Bush.
Right.
An amazing presidency.
Well,
truly an amazing presidency.
And it may be the last stolen election before this stolen election. Because if Hillary would go to the trouble she would go to steal the Democratic nomination, I guarantee you there's a plan in place to follow through with the general election. It just makes sense. Why open yourself up to that kind of scrutiny, risk of prosecution, if you're not going to, go for the whole?
You're not going to go for the entire bundle, which is what the Clintons have always been capable of doing, right?
Right.
I mean, think of sex in the White House, the President of the United States and sex in the White House. I wasn't witness, so I don't know what actually happened between Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton, but it shows a propensity for bad decision making and for risk taking.
Yeah.
An incredible propensity for risk taking.
Well, that's been the career of the Clintons from the very start.
So, yeah.
There's been a litany of scandals that have followed them from one public position to the. She's Secretary of the State. She can't be Secretary of State without being accused of selling favors to the Saudis, to the Qatar,
To the Russians,
to the
Panamanians, whoever.
Right, and it's awfully smelly. I mean, the smell test Clintons have never passed the smell test yet. Whitewater they got away with, or at least they survived that process. And other people go to jail and die off, but the Clintons persevere. They survive. But Jill Stein is definitely worth considering. In one of the pieces that I put on Facebook, I talked about why I, as a former Bernie supporter, would support Jill Stein. And I would hazard to say that even if she can't win, and she'll be in 48 states now, 3 of which you have to do write-in, but they would be acceptable. So she's gotten the exposure that she needed, the access for the voter. But we've got to get out of this two-party system. The two parties that are there are now corrupt. They're equally corrupt, and they're equally owned by the money. So money interests. And Jill Stein is not, the Green Party is not, the things that they hold up as valuable are not corporations first, not something like the TPP, which absolutely is a corporate giveaway. If we tried to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline once TPP was in effect, or at least it may not be part of the geographic location to be relevant, but if we tried to do that and impact the earnings of a foreign corporation, they can sue us. Every time they can sue us. There'll be tribunals set up, and they can come after us because we're hurting their profitability.
Right.
Doesn't matter that they're screwing our environment or doing something that endangers our people. We're hurting their profitability. And what kind of a trade deal is that? I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely a bundle of bad gifts packaged under the name a trade deal, and it's bullshit. And Obama should be, spanked for trying to push this thing through. What the hell is this problem?
He could be impeached. It's treasonous.
Well, I think, I'm writing this piece that I told you about Hillary, and I think Obama could be impeached because of his inaction to stop the Democratic election fraud. I think he knew about that early enough that inaction became, in some ways, complicity. So I think he could be impeached for that. He could be even an unindicted co-conspirator because his endorsement of her before the FBI investigation was over actually kind of helped free her up. If you think about having the boss's influence working on your side when she was dealing with the FBI.
Incredible.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton meeting with Loretta Lynch, there should have been sirens going off. Why is that acceptable? Why is that acceptable? What's the media doing about this?
Where is the media? Where was the media?
Yeah, the head in the sand.
Right.
The head in the sand or the head in the bank vault. One or the other.
I think the bank vaults or
yeah.
In the Clinton Foundation. the Clinton
Oh,
Foundation
yes,
and
yes.
the laundering of funds. I think you mentioned something about that recently?
Yes. Well, there was an IRS, news is filtering out from an IRS investigation. And recently, the figures that were released, the Clinton Foundation spent 91 point something million dollars, their operating budget. Out of that, I think it's less than 5% actually went to charitable acts or trusts or donations, and 95% went to feathering their own nests, salaries, fundraising. The whole thing is just a power center. It's for the Clintons. It's a power center. They can get everybody in the world involved in what they're doing, and they have ways to, bring the power and interest together and start brokering deals. That's just like the TPP, which she helped broker in the early days. So the Clinton Foundation should be put out of business, I think. I don't think the world's needy will notice a damn bit of difference, quite honestly. The Haitians, I think what the Haitians got from the Clinton Foundation was a resort being built at one end of the island, and Hillary's brother is part in that investment scheme.
It's scandalous.
Yeah,
What you say is it's scandalous, but it's exactly on point to what is happening. And the hoodwinking of the American public and the inaction of the important checks and balances that ostensibly have been established here in the United States to prevent exactly this type of manipulation of elections, fraud, the setting up of foundations which are then used to feather the originators of this foundation's nest. The entire question of a 501c3 that Paul has mentioned, the idea, I think it was a 501c4, I think that's what they have. It's set up to be used for political reasons, but I'm not certain of that. The reality, however, is that the use of 501c3s or 501c4s to have anyone in the world donate to this foundation and then use minute portions of those donations to help the needy or to help victims of a catastrophe, and then use 95% of that to pay salaries to support the interests of those that have created the foundation is a scandal, but it's a scandal that continues in the United States unabated, and it's part of the crisis that we find ourselves in today. Thanks for making that point, Paul.
Oh, you did a good job too. The foundation could be used as a power base by offering jobs, by offering speaking engagements, by offering these junkets. I mean, there are a lot of ways in which you can distribute goodies and get people somehow or other beholding to you. And nobody had any interest in really kind of watching that except for this fellow on Wall Street. I think his name was Ortel. Very interesting, some of the things he had to say. But so the Clintons immediately saw that they were going to be held somewhat accountable if they still had this thing going. So they've committed, you notice that they're not going to stop it until she wins. And that means that if you give money now, between now and then, you still have a chance to buy influence. So hurry up, folks. Send in those quarters, send in those dimes, because Hillary and Bill need that money. They need you to buy their influence. Though Bill is too busy doing other things.
How much money is in the foundation? Does anybody know, actually?
No, I have no idea. I forget. Oh, actually, yes, I do. $2 billion.
Are you serious?
Yes.
$2 billion?
Yes.
For those of you like myself who are not good at mathematics, there are 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 to get to 1,000,000. And 1,000 times 1,000,000 to get to 1 billion. So it's 2,000 times 1,000,000 in that foundation?
Yeah, yeah.
My God.
Well, you have to have enough to build resorts. You gotta be ready to build a resort at the moment tragedy strikes. Because those people need, they need the chambermaid jobs, they need the bartending jobs.
So you mean when a typhoon strikes, then the foundation immediately looks for a chance to help the people and rebuild, and they start out by building a resort?
I think
It's a strategy.
It's one of these organizations that every time tragedy strikes, it's a windfall. People donate money thinking that they're going to do some good. That was pretty much what happened, with the tsunami. A lot of organizations got a lot of money for that. I don't know how much of it ever got to the people in Asia, but it was a pretty big bundle that was raised.
Well, I guess a lot of publicity. It was a horrific scene. Anyone that saw that wave, that tsunami wave, wash through that island, or I think there were 7 different nations that experienced something like that in the Pacific Rim. It was horrific. I mean, individuals and livestock, complete families were annihilated at an instant. There was no chance, for any type of reconciliation with the end of their lives. It took place immediately. Right. So this type of horror motivates the human.
Well, people are very good. People are basically good, and they want to help other people in distress. There was an excellent recreation of tsunami in a movie with Matt Dillon, Matt Dillon. Trying to remember the name of it. It might have been The Afterlife or something like that.
I think you're right. Yeah.
At the beginning, there's this incredible recreation of the tsunami.
Right. Yeah.
Very scary.
It was frightening, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I believe, are you, when you speak about your religious ideas a few minutes ago, you were speaking, are you a Buddhist?
No, but I have a lot of similar beliefs. I believe reincarnation, which Buddhists believe in. And as I get older, I have a harder and harder time killing bugs. Buddhists don't, somebody that's a true Buddhist will not kill a bug unless they have absolutely no other recourse. And I'll kill a mosquito pretty quickly. I don't want to pretend otherwise. But if ants get into my cottage and I can lift them up and throw them out, I will. Or if I catch a fly, I'll do the same thing. So that's a very Buddhist thing that I'm suddenly, because I do believe that all things have life. I wrote a book, How to Train a Rock. I even believe rocks have life. And, we're all connected. This is all the web of life. We're all part of that web of life. So it's more spiritual than a religious belief. I think a religious is, is trying to anthropomorphize God, essentially. I've been reading some historical fiction by Bernard Cornwell, who lives out in the Cape. Fabulous books taking place in the 800s, 9th century, 10th century, of basically bringing England together. And it involves the Danes and the Normans and the Saxons all kind of vying for prominence and for a piece of land. It's fascinating. Why did I bring that up?
Well, there was a time, I believe, I'm not certain of this, Paul, but I believe that was a time of serious strife. A lot of nations, particularly the Scandinavian nations with their Viking raids on England and things of that nature, there was a lot of looking for religion and a lot of sense that unification, we need to unify and expand at the same time. Charlemagne was also prominent. I think in 881, that maybe 100 years or so, a century after the time you're speaking about.
No, that's about the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Charlemagne, the name given, I believe, by the French, but he was as much French as he was German, and established his empire almost on the border between France and Germany, but a very important figure, warlike but interested in consolidation, a great mediator, a great charismatic leader. So I think what you're talking about is typical for that time.
Right, and what I was started, it came back to me. The whole thing with the Vikings and Danes was that they had religion, and it was a very strong religion, but the religion was not built on a God that was a benevolent God, that where all creatures were one and there was only one God. They had a whole panoply of gods that loved to fight, loved to womanize, loved to, just really rough it up and have a good time. That was their religion, essentially.
Sounds like 21st century America, if you ask me.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about it, but I mean, just looking at the Patriots, if we can change the subject now, just looking at the Patriots. So, I have a history of being a football fan, but what is happening with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the new quarterback of the Patriots, Garoppolo, and the newest called Brissett after Garoppolo was injured. But the question is, so maybe one of these gung-ho, full-blooded American sports discussionists, because that's what they do. They're on television and they discuss in heated rhetoric, mano a mano, about the most ridiculous concepts, but without looking for 2 seconds at the following question: what happened to the Patriots defense after Garoppolo was injured? The Patriots defense has nothing to do with the Patriot offense. They're entirely different units. They're coached by different coaches. They have different strategies. They have different strengths and weaknesses. And because...
See, if you had a more holistic view of it, you would say that it had everything to do. I mean, it's an organism. A team is an organism.
I like that. Yeah.
No, but honestly, if you suddenly... Same thing happens in battles. If your leader gets cut down at the beginning of a battle, there's a good chance you're all going to panic and run. The whole thing shifted. The Dolphins were suddenly realizing that they didn't have to face, the German Panzer Division. They were facing a whole other thing that didn't have a team that didn't have their leader anymore. So they were playing a different team, and it kind of got them ginned up, clearly. And at the same time, we lost some wind out of our sails. And so I agree with you. In a lot of ways, they're separate, but there's, if you look at spirituality, if you look at it spiritually, the team has a spirit. And the spirit was wounded when Garoppolo was hurt. Some teams can rise above that and some can't. And some, they held on, and Brissett scored a touchdown to his credit. But if the game went any longer, we were going to lose it, absolutely, because that field had tipped in a totally opposite direction all of a sudden, and they were running downhill, and we were running uphill. So,
Paul Stephen Stone. I agree, Paul. So if we were to compare what happened at Foxborough yesterday to the position of leadership in the upcoming election, where's the American public now? Have they found a leader? Are they going to rally behind their leader? What's at stake, and what is the strategy being brought forward?
Well, the wrong people have control of things. That's the unfortunate truth. If things had gone the way that they were honestly going, people were making votes, that if everybody's vote really counted, I don't believe you would have had the two most unliked candidates in history facing each other. You would have had one unlikable candidate and one candidate that was loved. But, generally this is like mob politics. The most vicious character ends up on top. It's just the way it is. And Bernie got absolutely pulverized by that opponent of his. So
He won 46% of the popular vote
He won a lot more than that.
46%.
right, he did.
They acknowledged 46%.
Yes, and he started out as a candidate absolutely nobody believed could win anything, just because of the socialist label, if nothing else. Forget about the fact he was 74 years
Or
old.
Jewish.
Or Jewish, yeah. The whole thing was people related to him. They thought he was honest. I think Trump had initially had a big jump in popularity because the people who were watching those stupid
Everybody
debates,
knows him.
they thought he was authentic. They thought what he was saying was what he felt and believed, and that's exactly what they got. He doesn't think anything through. He just says whatever's on his mind. Problem is his mind changes every 5 minutes. But so if it hadn't been meddled with, we wouldn't be facing such a bizarre situation. But we are facing this bizarre. And every time somebody reveals something about her, she's more and more unpopular. It was just revealed, aside from the Clinton Foundation only giving 5% of the raised money to charity, that the fundraising arm of the Clinton campaign was actually double and triple and quadruple billing one-time donors. And generally, it was only the poor donors. It was people who gave under $100. Because over $100, the credit card companies look at it. So one woman was billed 25, 25, 25, and 10 because they wanted to keep it under 100. And she only donated once. And Wells Fargo has been basically making refunds for millions of dollars that these people have been stealing from these card holders. I mean, why? Who the hell gets that money, and what do they need it for? That's just such arrogance. And they've been told about it time and time again because people have complained to them. The first place you go when you think somebody's taking your money is to the person who's taking you unfairly.
Right, that's the first place you go.
So they've had complaints. People talked about taking months to get to the person that they needed to get to, and then to no avail. It's actually very bizarre that they would be that stupid. But nothing seems to, like Trump said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. She can crap in front of the entire assembled country and nobody would care. So.
It's a disastrous situation, frightening and disastrous.
And she's got some illness, probably Parkinson's.
Oh, that's another point.
Yeah. She probably has Parkinson's. She's got some sort of neurological problem. If she had pneumonia, it would have been as a symptom of Parkinson's.
Could you explain that to our viewers, Paul? I'm not sure I know it.
Well, there have been a number of doctors who have watched her and observed her actions. She had a number of on-camera moments where she had very bizarre reactions. She had one where she was bobbing her head like a puppet.
Oh, wow, no kidding.
And if you looked at her, even on the night that they gave her the nomination, or celebrated the nomination, with the balloons dropping, she looked like a doll. She had these real sort of gaga, weird kind of expressions. There have been a whole series of symptoms that have led people to diagnose her as having Parkinson's. And then pneumonia, which they claimed retrospectively that she had, and that was why after saying she was dehydrated on 79-degree weather, so stupid. They changed the story. They said it was pneumonia. Then they said, to give it more credence, that the campaign had been coming down with it. People in the campaign, so saying that essentially it was contagious. And then so she comes out of that building and grabs the first child she sees for a photo op. That's also bullshit, folks. You should not believe that was really Hillary Clinton coming out of that building looking revitalized and energetic and happy. She's got a body double. She has a doppelganger. And the only reason that I say with such confidence is that the Secret Service would never have allowed her to walk out and just stand there totally exposed, waving at people.
And not being in front of her or scanning scanning the buildings in front of her.
Yeah, and looking to see if there's anybody in the neighborhood that might do something untoward. It was totally bogus. And the press could care less. They got a news story, Hillary had pneumonia, that's all they care about. They take the story, they eat it like good little children, and then they spit it out. like they're supposed to.
And we accept it. We, as a public, accept these stories one after another.
So it would seem. I'm not totally convinced. I think it's starting to, the fact that people are starting to get their news online, I think people are kind of hip to what's happening. I think one of the reasons that that shows how people aren't paying attention to the news is that Trump would not be as popular as he is if everybody believed everything they read in the papers. I've only come to distrust the papers recently, so I still see all this bullshit about Trump, and I take it in, and it makes me more and more nervous about him. But people who aren't aware that the newspapers are totally slanted for Hillary, against Bernie, against Trump, and it's just bizarre. To discover that the New York Times can't be trusted to give you all the news or share what you need to know about the world out there is scary.
It's frightening.
And the Globe as well. And I wrote letters to the Globe editors and to the Times editors asking them to report on the election fraud and calling them out as lacking integrity. And then I wrote that piece, How to Spot the Theft of a Presidential Election. That was kind of fun. But it was written as though it was a primer to journalism students in the year 2020 on what to look for when someone steals a presidential
Using
election.
2016 election realities.
Yes, yeah, because it's so obvious. This is the most ham-fisted election theft in history. I mean, since Tammany Hall anyway. Nobody has the gall to do what they did. It was endless. They could have taken the voters and started shooting them. It would have been maybe a little more obvious, but not much.
Well, I wanted to explain my grinning into the camera and grinning back. I'm not a sadist. I'm not a person who enjoys pain or fraud or ill treatment of dogs, cats, children, or human beings. I do feel that we as a nation are too naive, too gullible, too unsophisticated in spite of our riches, in spite of our dominance geopolitically, economically, etc. We are lost teenagers, and I think I've stolen your line.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I essentially was saying that we had the same sense of control and limits and boundaries as a teenager, and at the same time, what did I say? We were lawless and uncontrolled or something like that. Anyway, if you look at all the countries in Europe, they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, some of them. And we're just a couple hundred years old, and we're like adolescents. We need to, if we walk into a shop where they sell lots of fragile stuff, get us out of there, because we'll smash some of it, and we'll feel we have every right to do so, just like a 2-year-old. Right?
Where does our feeling of entitlement come from?
I don't know. How could we have such collateral damage with the drone program and still continue with it?
And still make it domestic. The program is going to be domestic now. The drones have already been allowed.
I mean, for spying, not for killing.
Well, not for killing, but for delivering pizza. In Virginia Tech, the first drones are going to be used to deliver burritos.
Oh.
Seriously.
I believe it.
NPR.
Well, Amazon tried to get that, and they wouldn't let them do it. They wouldn't let Bezos do it, because Amazon is so big and there's so much stuff that you'll have in the air. We won't be able to see the sky anymore. All we'll see is Amazon deliveries.
It's true.
It may help with, blocking dangerous sun rays, but it's not going to do much for anybody else except Jeff Bezos.
So I believe we're in deep trouble, and my grinning back at the camera, grinning at you, the viewers, is not an effort to frighten or to show my sympathy for behaviors which we as a nation should be ashamed of.
Where is our outrage? Why aren't more of you outraged? You are having your Constitution crapped upon. You are having your rights as voters absolutely trampled like grapes in a vat. But outrage is missing. And that's the media's fault, really, because people don't know what's happening unless they're watching online and reading online. And we're too comfortable. We've got our video games, we've got our TV shows, we've got our, world comes to our door through streaming. We've got everything we want. Look at that great truck. Who but?
W.B. Mason, a W.B. Mason truck just passed in front of our studio.
They follow me around.
So perhaps it's possible now for us to get to a point that we both wanted to make, and that is now that Bernie Sanders is not in the campaign, the question many are asking is who are they going to vote for in the presidential election coming up in about, 6 weeks?
Something like that. Beginning of November.
November 8th?
So it must be 6 weeks, yeah.
In about 6 weeks' time, that's not a lot of time. The debates are coming up. The question about the debates is why are only two political parties going to be part of these debates? And the reason for that is that these political debates are ruled over, are controlled by a small organization which determines who will be allowed to debate, the conditions under which they're going to be, the subject matter, where it takes place, who the journalists are. And this is a frightening situation, another situation in which the rights of Americans are controlled by a very small private organization.
It's actually controlled by the two political parties.
It's true.
Yeah.
Could you explain that, exactly how that
Well,
works?
no, how it originally was the League of Women Voters.
Sure.
And they were working with the parties, and the parties became so difficult to deal with that they backed out. And so since then, the parties, in the guise of these individuals, have been controlling it, and they've made 15% as the cutoff. You need to get 15% in the polls. But now the CNN poll that was just conducted recently and showed Jill Stein and Gary Johnson at a very low level, there wasn't a single person between 18 and 34 that was interviewed for that poll.
Oh, no kidding.
For some reason, they cut out that entire, and so what you have is a totally false outcome. In terms of if it's supposedly judging, because the millennials, those are the ones that were more likely to go for Jill Stein.
Oh, precisely.
So they take a bogus results of bogus polls, and they use that to substantiate they're not allowing anybody else in. And it's just what the media is doing as well. They basically isolate anybody that's getting in their way of having these two people, this horse race, that they want to have a horse race between two individuals. Which makes it a lot easier in a certain way, but they want Hillary. There's no question they want Hillary.
So that's the question, basically, Paul. Hillary Clinton as president would be a disaster, complete disaster. I'm convinced of the fact because I believe Hillary Clinton is amoral. She has no moral guidelines. She's ruthless. She's self-centered. She may be seriously ill.
She may be.
Maybe.
And you can't trust anybody around her to tell you the truth.
I think it's true.
They'll tell you anything they want that they think will make you feel less concerned, but they won't tell you the truth. Everything but.
And I think there are very powerful forces in this nation which are allied with the status quo that don't want Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. I think there are forces close to Donald Trump, very important, very powerful structures, and structures equally ruthless to Hillary Clinton, who would be willing to do perhaps anything to get Trump elected. The crisis, however, is I believe that either candidate, either Clinton or Trump, would be a disaster if they were elected president of the United States. And because I've supported Bernie Sanders, because I believe he's a person of integrity, he's had a lot of experience, I think he's charismatic, I think he's truthful, I think he's someone who would, as President of the United States, enact precisely the politics that he put forward, and he hasn't been involved in scandals. I think the fact that Bernie Sanders is not running for president, we need to have someone that we could vote for. And I believe that person is Jill Stein.
Who I've nicknamed, excuse me, the anti-Hillary or the Jillery. Either one is fine.
So I believe it's time in the last quarter of an hour, if you'll bear with us, to get a look basically at the Jill Stein campaign. This is what we have. I don't know if it's possible to read any of this, but it says...
I'll put everybody to sleep.
Oh, it's true, right?
Essentially, if you're have any awareness of Bernie's policies, Jill Stein is in total agreement with all of them except the continued use of drones in warfare. That's the entire difference between her. She wants to forgive college loans. She wants to, in fact, that's one of the things that she will do. She will forgive. Bernie wanted to make it so that college didn't bankrupt anybody anymore. She was going to go farther. She's going to go farther, and she will forgive. If you have a government loan, she will forgive it. If you have a government student loan, excuse me. And that could be the biggest economic boom.
Oh, to put a lot of money back in the pockets of the middle class.
Millions and millions of dollars, trillions of dollars, or billions, or whatever. But I know there's a couple $100,000 that a close relative of mine could certainly use and hold on to rather than sending it to the government over the next 10 years.
We're financing the government basically through these student loans. We're financing private organizations. We're financing the federal government massively through these student loans. And basically, we're doing exactly the opposite of what we're doing with private corporations. For instance, if I've understood this correctly, Paul, maybe you can help me see if the reasoning is clear. The internet was a system devised by the military, I believe, and used by the military in communicating and working with systems, coordinating things. And there was a decision made at some time to give the structure of the internet into private hands so that it could be used basically to generate profits, similar to the space program. The space program begun by the Kennedy administration in the 1960s, successful in the 70s and 80s and 90s, generating huge profits for corporations building the rocket engines, the return vehicles, etc., etc. So the government provides the financing and the research, and then gives these technologies then to corporations. With the student loan, it's exactly opposite. The middle class, in order to finance the education of their children, takes out a loan from the federal government through which their children are educated, and then the children then pay back this sum into the government with interest rates, then over decades. So it's precisely the opposite between how corporations establish themselves and how students and professionals establish themselves. Of course, if you're part of the elites, you don't need a student loan.
Well, everything you're saying is true. And I look at it in a very simple light. We've been starving all the social network programs, the social net, and that's because of the taxes. I mean, we don't have the money. The Republicans have over years, through They've been very strong fighting to prevent any taxes, finding loopholes for corporations. What the oil companies make in a given year and what they pay taxes on is absolutely criminal. So all this has been happening, and now you need some sources of income to actually keep this government working. So the 6% or whatever it is that we get from students is funding a lot of programs. That's a lot of money that should be paid by people that are making a lot of money, who can afford either advisors that know how to avoid taxes or accountants and attorneys who do the same. So essentially the students are paying for what the wealthy should be paying. What the
Bank of America.
Yes.
AT&T. Apple.
Yeah, Apple finally gets come up as a little bit in Europe, and I have no sympathy for them. I think Europe handed them a $14 billion tax bill. They've been trying to hide out in Ireland as though they somehow really were headquartered there. Yeah, I'm surprised that Cook didn't develop an Irish brogue to help him get through the hearing. But anyway.
So, if I have interpreted that correctly, Paul, you see the American political and economic system as working in the interests of elites.
They own all the levers of power. They own the news, they own the entertainment. Basically, they own, and they have the Congress. What else do you need? You don't need anything else. You got it all. Yes, and I think they control the media, which really is going to control the ability of anybody to make change. For what happened to have happened, where the media totally ignored the election fraud that Hillary and co. Basically ran rampant throughout the primary process, for none of that to have actually stuck in anybody's mind so much that they would actually follow it through with an investigative report it's staggering. It's really staggering that they would allow themselves to be so journalistically corrupt or corrupted. I keep telling the story when I was watching a piece of the Democratic convention. The Bernie's delegates walked out. And so you had almost half of the delegates in the arena. The place emptied out. And the TV networks hid it from their viewers. And Jake Tapper was hosting the CNN coverage of the convention, and the cameras started to follow the people out. So Jake, sensing a dangerous moment when they were actually going to transmit news, cut quickly to Boys to Men singing on the stage because they were from Philadelphia. You almost had some news sneaking through. The whole disruption of the Bernie delegates was totally blacked out. They were doing the Democratic Party's work. They weren't doing the work of news people. They were just lapdogs.
Lapdogs.
Well, if you see the convention, there's a video out online, and some really funny things happened.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was kind of a cat and mouse game. It was fascinating. The Burners would do something, and then the Hillary cronies would respond. One of the things the Burners did was one day they wore not psychedelic, but the shirts that almost glowed in the dark. They were so bright. So what the Hillary people did was they had these boards made up so that the people sitting in the audience could hold up a board that was twice as high, and there were slits for their eyes. So they hold up the boards to block out the people wearing the psychedelic shirts, and they have their eyes through these slits. Wouldn't that be an interesting news story, you think? Wouldn't you think? It's just amazing. It's just amazing. I've never seen a news organization.
It's like a college football game, they do things like this, or a fraternity party or something. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Completely ridiculous.
Yeah, what happened to the fact that you're supposed to follow a news story?
What happened to the professional ethic? What the fuck happened to the professional ethic? That's the question. What do we have for journalistic ethic? Where are we? Who's controlling this?
It's really sickening, and it's scary. It's scary. If the New York Times won't tell you what's happening, you've got a real problem. We have a real problem.
All the news fit to print.
Once
they used to use the slogan.
All the news that they want to print is what it is. And right. It's just not, they're controlling who you get to vote on. I mean, they're as much keeping Jill Stein out of the mainstream media as the Commission on Debates.
It's true.
They don't want, Fox has actually spent more time on Jill Stein lately than anybody else.
It's true.
I don't know, folks, we've got a real problem, and I think what has to happen is that we have to go back to that doctrination that talked about limiting corporate ownership. Oh, they're coming to take me away. No.
You still got 2 minutes, so we'll
Okay.
take you away for another 2 minutes.
Okay, well, it used to be, until Clinton signed a law making it otherwise, that you couldn't own a newspaper and a TV. There you go. You couldn't own a newspaper and a TV in the same media market. You had to divest of one. And that was the excuse they used to take WHDH away from its owners and give it to people that were more favorably positioned in the marketplace.
Paul Stephenson. Paul, thanks ever so much for coming here to Cambridge Community Television. We appreciate
Well,
that.
thank you for having me. It's always fun to let my lips flap for an hour. It's a lot of fun.
Well, we're very pleased to have someone with your insight. 35 years you've been looking at these things, haven't you?
For a long time.
I didn't
I'd
want-
say 70 years, but I couldn't hold paper when I was very small.
When did you first get interested in politics?
I don't know that I was interested in politics. I became interested in politics when I started to be enough aware of what was going on to realize that there were some things happening. Bush stealing 2 elections really galvanized me.
Good luck. We'll see you again soon, Paul. Thanks
Yes,
so
you
much
will.
for coming by.
Yes, you will. You should see my video on the Bush years.
Well, you've got time to plug it.
You have to go to YouTube, go Paul Stephen Stone. This is like, after 8 years of Bush, before we voted.
Oh, you can do that. Go ahead.
Okay.
Define it again.
Or else you can just go to my paulstephenstone.com, and we can get to it pretty easily there.
I think it'll take place.
So we're going to show you a video that I did
We've only got 30 seconds.
to get there, or to show it?
We only got 23 seconds now.
Oh. Well, it's a little longer than that, but you'll get a sense of it. So if you get to paulstephenstone.com, go to the work. So,
I won't be able to get that.
no. Well, folks, you yourselves can go to paulstephenstone.com, and there's a video that I did, the ballad